meeting, I think it was many, many years ago. And as we got to know each other over the years, there were two things we found out that we had very much in common. The first one was he grew up in a small town on the northern border of Michigan called Sault Ste. Marie, very small town. And my mother grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, and I spent tons and tons of time there growing up. And his parents' house and my grandfather's house were a short walk away from one another. His father, Bernard, went to school in the same grade as my uncle Bernard. It's just amazing. And I've actually had the opportunity to get to be friends with Brian's parents as well, and had lunch with them several times up in the Sioux. So a very small world sort of story. And more relevant to today's presentation, though, is, again, as I got to know Brian over the years, he had told me in serving in the Peace Corps in Africa after college, and has had a lifelong interest in working there and educating there. And similarly, in 1985, I joined the GLOS group of experts, the Global Sea Level Coordination Group. And it's been a 35-year-long now effort there to do capacity building in Africa. So we had that very much in common, which is part of the motivation for getting this talk together today. I ran a sea level network in East Africa, and it's been something Ryan and I have talked about over the years, and maybe someday we'll get around to doing something more with that. But in the meantime, I want to keep this short because I know we have 4 people to hear from today. So Brian, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here. We will talk about our work related to the UN decade, and Frank Mueller-Carter and Enrique Montez are heavily involved in that, probably more of you as well. And I think I'll introduce my co-speakers one at a time as they come, because it'll be easier to remember. So yeah, I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, and I will just say one thing about Gary's connection there. His aunt Bernice, who unfortunately passed away recently, was one of the most famous female athletes in Sault Ste. Marie. She was a fast pitch softball pitcher. My dad still talks about, how great she was, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And I just learned from Gary today, she bowled a perfect 300 game once as well. So small town connections. So let me share my screen. I'm more used to Zoom, but I think you are seeing my screen, is that right?
Yes, I can see it, Brian.
And is this full screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm a physical oceanographer, and I study tides and eddies and run numerical models and work on satellite projects and all that. But the main purpose today is to talk about this other passion of mine, as Gary said. So towards a truly global ocean science enterprise, we're going to talk about the Coastal Ocean Environment Summer School in Ghana, COESSING, webpage given here, and our larger idea, which all 3 co-speakers today are also involved in, of kind of a Peace Corps for the ocean. We're calling it Global OceanCorps for now. So mostly this will be about the Ghana School and a little bit about our larger idea. So many people have worked on this, including the 3 co-speakers today. The Ghana, in case you don't know, is in West Africa, and we work in the capital city of Accra. This picture was taken in 2018, and some of the people that will talk today, there's Maddie there, and Edem is in this picture somewhere, I think here behind the globe. So what led us to this point, and what can be learned about that journey, about how to expand such efforts? So forgive me a little bit of personal history. My history in Africa, in a sense, goes back to before I was born, interestingly, because my parents met there. So I grew up in the cold part of Michigan, Sault Ste. Marie. As Gary and I mentioned, that's a view from my parents' deck in a typical winter. And my bachelor's degree is from the tropical part of Michigan, University of Michigan, in 1988. And after my college graduation, I joined the Peace Corps. Some of you may know that JFK announced the idea of the Peace Corps on the steps of the Student Union at the University of Michigan and a campaign stop in 1960. So there's a deep history at my University of Peace Corps. And in fact, the first year I was back as a faculty member, well, second year, I guess, they had a 50th anniversary at the University of Michigan for Peace Corps. So my first Peace Corps posting in Liberia was cut short due to a brutal civil war. That's a whole story in itself. But we were evacuated and I was reassigned to Ghana, where I taught physics and math for 2 years at a secondary school. And this all matters for the story, not just me reminiscing. But here's a picture of Joseph Ansang, who was one of our great students in this class. Here's Admudu Kilu, I'll mention briefly, was another great student. Seydou, there are many great students here. I would say those two were the strongest. And Seydou Jeremiah was another student I knew well. That's me with a beard 30 years ago. So that's in northern Ghana in a town called Demago. One thing I'll notice, because this is a talk about diversity, notice that this science course, these are the students that took science, is all male. And I am pretty sure that that situation has changed for the better in Ghana in terms of being more gender balanced. Why the Peace Corps? So the Peace Corps provided infrastructure so that someone like me, a recent college graduate who wanted to go to Africa, was able to do it. It was a huge adventure. But if I'd had to do it on my own, it would have been, I think, too much of an adventure and, more importantly, logistical challenge to pull off. So the fact that Peace Corps existed, found me an assignment, made sure that the people in Damago had, lodging for me, that actually really mattered, and that we'll come back to that point at the end. But as I marched through my post-Peace Corps life and getting a faculty position, I lost touch with these students. And then 16 years later, I started hearing from them, through the internet. So I should mention, of course, 1992, there wasn't much of an internet. So I started hearing where all these people were, what they were up to. And in particular, I heard that Joseph was doing a PhD in applied math in Canada, remarkably with someone that I know very well named Bruce Sutherland. Gary might know him as well. So these are the email exchanges after 16 years of no contact between me and Joseph that, oh, you're in a similar field and you work for someone I know, that's interesting. And you're in a colder place than Michigan, Edmonton, Alberta. So we brought him to Ann Arbor. This is my house where I'm talking from today for this Peace Corps reunion I briefly mentioned. And my partner, Jennifer, claims credit for this, and I think she does deserve some. She said, you should consider hiring him as a postdoc, which I did. And he was in my lab for several years, and the University of Michigan did a story about our surprise reunion. So again, he was in the lab for several years. He's now back in Ghana as a postdoc. As a faculty member. I just learned this trick yesterday that you can have a laser pointer in PowerPoint. So there he is. And in my group for several years. Now he's back in Ghana. And Paige Martin and Anna Savage, members of the research group at Michigan, who also spent some time in Ghana. So the whole thing began as an outreach project for an NSF career grant, and we took a scouting trip, Joseph and I, in 2014, just to start talking to people about how this could eventually grow. And by the way, this is my by the way slide. Those students I showed earlier, one of the other strong students actually became a member of parliament representing the district in Ghana where we all met years ago. So here's the reunion with both of them. Okay, so then getting into the summer school, we held the first one at 2015. So for reasons that I could explain, but it's a bit complicated, we go back and forth between Regional Maritime University, which trains people for maritime careers such as shipping ports, etc., and the University of Ghana. And so the first one was held at the Maritime University, and it was relatively small. It's been larger ever since. There was maybe about 30 to 40 Africans that participated regularly. There were 4 of us that came from the US, Joseph, Wynne Johnson, who's a chemist, chemical oceanographer, and Ebenezer Nyadro, who is from Ghana originally, just like Joseph, and he is working in the US for NOAA. We only did lectures that first year. So then, interestingly, you normally think of your university providing seed money and then getting an NSF grant, but the first few years of the summer school, it was the other way around because I had no idea how much interest there was going to be in the summer school. And so I didn't budget enough money. And I realized this pretty quickly that, I did not ask for NSF for enough money. But the University of Michigan is a fairly wealthy university for a public university. And my colleague, Adam Simon, said, if we brought U of M students, we could tap into university resources, at least for a couple years. They're not going to do it forever. So for a couple of years, this school was actually mostly funded by my university. That allowed us to grow. We had closer to maybe 100 African participants and 9 this year and more ever since, people coming from the US. There's Edem, who will speak last today. And when you had all these extra people, they have ideas like, well, of course, you shouldn't just do lectures, you should do labs and you should do trips to the beach. And so we added more things to the curriculum. And like I said, this switched to University of Ghana, where Edem is, and they have a marine science department. She is in that department. So in 2017, the new thing that we added was a trip on a boat, and drifters were deployed, and almost all the African participants got seasick. I like to joke, that shows the advantages of being a modeler, which I am. That was at Regional Maritime. And then University of Ghana, 2018, back there. Again, there's Edem, and there's Maddie. That's the same picture I showed at the beginning. The new thing that we introduced this year was to have projects. Now the school is only 1 week long, so you can't do a really deep project in 1 week, but you can do something. And so we had these some participants chose to do projects as opposed to just labs and lectures and field trips. And in 2019, we had many of the projects present their findings in PowerPoint. We did that the year before too, but it grew in 2019. I'm purposely not telling you what happened after 2019 because Maddie's going to tell you about that. But African participants from 2015 to 2019 range from undergrads to faculty, some governmental and private sector workers, most from Ghana, but many starting to come from Nigeria, which is the most populous country in Africa, and some from other West African countries as well. That's 2015 to 19. The Ghanaian instructors and co-organizers in the pre-COVID years from the two universities are listed here. Edem, one of the prominent ones. And red means that they participated more than once. So people that helped us instruct or organize more than once. So lots of people from both of the universities that we work with is the point. And kind of similar from the global north. So we have faculty, research scientists, and postdocs, and grad students and undergrads. And the red means they've participated more than once. So we've had people that have been, loyally participating in some cases multiple times. And Maddie, who's talking after me, first came when she was a grad student at Berkeley, and then a postdoc. She can maybe say more, but she's been a postdoc at 2 different places, and now she's a faculty. So she's changed jobs 3 times and is still involved in the school. I'm really happy about that. So a lot of people changing jobs and still staying with us. So I won't read this off, but you can see, we cover a variety of subjects in oceanography and even some non-oceanographic subjects. Tashiana, one of our speakers today, is not an oceanographer. She's an atmospheric scientist, and that's also very important. We all agree. And some resources and energy too, people covering that. So the funding thus far has come from NSF. I think I forgot to mention this, but then after my university funded the expansion, we had NSF funding for 2018, 2019, and 1 more year of an in-person school, which I have here at Michigan, holding it. And we've had various Michigan sources, as I mentioned. We're very grateful for some support one year from this operation, which is a fantastic operation. Some of you may know it's started by a Nobel Prize winner, and it's all about expanding science around the world. And they have some oceanographers and various Ghanaian sources. So I have one more NSF grant for one more in-person school. We're starting to write proposals. Howard University wrote a proposal. The basic idea is set up weather stations in West Africa. That'll improve weather and climate prediction in West Africa and the eastern US, because hurricanes have their genesis from the waters off West Africa. And our school we used as a platform for meetings. And then Michigan and Lamont want to add a sediment coring to the school. So people are starting to build on the thing. And so why do this? The percent of people in the world that are African is about 15% and growing rapidly. Add in the diaspora and it's a larger number. But if you go to big ocean sciences meetings, you can see with your own eyes that the number of scientists that are African or diaspora is not 15 or 18%. It's less than that. Aside from that, representation issue, oceanography is inherently a global science, and we need African partners to observe and model the oceans around Africa, especially in EEZ zones where you have to have local partners. And then, of course, global warming and other global problems must have participation from Africans if we're going to solve them. So we have a testimonials page of people from the US and Africa, what they've gotten out of it. Nefertiti was an undergrad at Hampton University, which is a historically black college university, when she first participated. And now she's a grad student at UC Irvine. And she says people of color need to be represented in the science, and global issues require people to work together. And she learned that that's possible from our program. And here's a Nigerian participant who worked with Maddie, who will speak after me on a project track and really enjoyed it. And so you can read that. And some other selected success stories, enthusiasm of people coming multiple times, as I mentioned. And I will say that for me, one thing I'm grateful for is people like Maddie, who's talking after me, that have really helped to organize the school. Edem has as well, and Tashiana. So the last few years, to be honest, I've focused more on kind of fundraising and that kind of thing. And really the school is run by other people, Maddie being a prominent example, and Tashiana and Edem. So the young instructors are taking charge, which is good. Here's a master's thesis that was written on the impacts of the school at Oregon State, and this is now published in an education journal. So I consider that a success story. We have another paper published on the school as well about the effect of remote sensing. I'm supporting a student at the University of Ghana. Here he is. He's a student with Joseph Ansang, my former high school student and postdoc. And one thing I want to say briefly here is that it costs about $8,000 to support a student in Ghana, so much less than in the US. So I think we could think about this as one of many possible models to build up science in Africa, that if it's costs less to support them in Africa, but they can still collaborate with US people with our resources. I work with Dimitri Menemenlis. The two of us work together with Joseph and his student Patrick. One of our participants is getting a PhD at University of Southern Mississippi with Stephen Howden, who's here, who interestingly is old family friends with Maddie, and they met each other in the school. Like, oh wow, haven't seen you in a while. And Stephen Howden is a hydrographer, and that's important because you have fast-growing economies in Africa that require ports. Ports require safe passage. You need to have hydrography, so they're asking us to help them build a hydrography program, and I've passed that on to Stephen, and they're making some slow progress on that. Another success story of the school is Python. I never guessed that this would be important, but it is. My student Paige Martin, I brought her there, and this is all her idea. She said, don't use MATLAB, which costs money for license fees, but use Python, which is free, and that way the African participants can load it on their machines and use it beyond the school, and it won't cost them anything. And this has been a very big success. Many people have been in our workshops, Here's an example of someone who used Python to enable their research. The gist of this story is that using Python, he programmed a Raspberry Pi, which allowed him to take his data at much lower power cost, which enabled his PhD research in Nigeria. Interestingly, he's not even an oceanographer. He's an atmospheric scientist, but he was just hungry for that knowledge and came to our ocean summer school. So we have enabled PhD thesis with this kind of stuff, and also with our satellite component. Discussing how to use satellite data. Richmond Kennedy Kwarku is a regular participant who has an NGO devoted to cleaning up plastic in Ghana, which is a massive, massive problem that you can just see from these pictures, and this one here. So many people had worked to make this school possible, as I mentioned, and many of them had never been to Africa before participating in our school, and they came because of their passion and because the infrastructure was in place, making participation relatively simple. So now I'm getting back to the Peace Corps. People are busy. If a few of us will form a school, then a lot of people will join. That's the point. That's kind of the analogy to Peace Corps. Make it easy, people will join. And so when we give talks like this, more people ask to join. The interest is there for a substantial expansion. So we have this concept now called OceanCorps, or a little bit longer is Global OceanCorps and Conveyor. And the idea is maybe there should be like a Peace Corps for ocean science. If you had the structure and the funding, which we of course are still trying to get, then you could duplicate this in as many countries as people think is reasonable. And an even larger idea is, why not have a Peace Corps for all of science, like a STEM Corps? So I'll end with these few slides. So OceanCorps is a recently endorsed global program of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. We have ties with several other UN Decade programs listed here, and that includes the one that Frank and Enrique are involved in. And we're closely allied with EQUISI, which is ideas to get more funding for building up ocean capacity around the world. The STEM Corps thing, briefly, I'll just say that I'm working with a former NSF deputy director and others to try to push that idea. And well, I won't say much more about that, but it'd be great if we could get that even larger thing going. And I will say that programs that also serve groups that are underrepresented in the US, I think would be more likely to attract substantial US funding. So we're already collaborating with Hampton and Howard HBCUs, and we have a young HBCU professor on our steering committee of OceanCorps. So last slide, I think if we could get this going, it'll make it easy for busy people to participate and internationalize the US community, make them more aware of the rest of the world. And I'll stop there and pass it on to Maddie.
Awesome, thank you, Brian.
Sorry, let's see, how do I stop sharing? Is it this X maybe? Have I stopped sharing?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Let me just pull up my slides. A moment. There we go, same picture again. So hi everyone, I'm happy to be here today. Like Brian said, my name is Maddie Foster-Martinez, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of New Orleans. And I've been involved with the school since 2017. So I was one of the lucky people to actually get to go and participate in person. And of course, when the global pandemic started, we had to make the decision whether or not we were going to just pause the school until travel restrictions were lifted, or if we wanted to attempt to do something virtual and online. And I'm really happy that the overwhelming response was yes, we should still do something. People would still be interested. If we had something online, they would still want to participate and would be able to get something useful out of that. So today I'll be talking briefly about what that transition was like to try to move the school online and some of the lessons we learned from that. Interaction is really key to our in-person school. I think as many people here have probably experienced before, it's often the informal conversations that you have with people at lunch or, in between talks, or the question and answer session, after a lecture. That's when you really get to know people. You get a lot of networking opportunities. You get to learn a lot from those conversations. And so we knew we wanted to maintain some sort of ability for people to interact and have that networking. But at the same time, our participants are mostly coming from West African countries, and there's a lot of unreliable infrastructure. So this is both electricity and internet. This is a picture from the in-person school, and you can see we're all kind of gathered on this one side of the room because that's where there was a working outlet. So this is a challenge that we face sometimes when we're there as well. And so because of that, we try to have something for everyone. So what you see on the left is we put content on YouTube, our YouTube channel, and the COESSING website. And these are things that are publicly available. They're available year-round, but there's no interaction. The main plus of this, though, is that people are able to download content. So one thing that we've learned, that we've heard from participants, is that when you have, really a really good connection, people often download a lot of videos all at once and then can go back and rewatch them on their own time, without having to worry about their connection. So these are some quotes I just pulled from our surveys at the end of the school. And one person said, they were able to download the recorded lectures and rewatch for further understanding. And another person pointed this out as one of the great advantages with the online format, is being able to watch materials again and again. We did, for people who have more reliable infrastructure, we did have some interactive components. So we had lectures live on Zoom, we have office hours on Zoom, and we also had a Slack channel. And so Slack is a great interactive platform where you can have message boards, you can talk to your peers. So again, trying to maintain some of that interaction for our participants. And this we leave up all year round, but I think everyone is most active on it during the week of the school. So a little bit more about those live lectures. They cover a range of topics. We had both professional development lectures. This is a flyer from one of those. This is Pathways Through STEM panel that Tashiana put together last year. But we also have some more scientifically focused ones on global ocean modeling and ocean acidification, for example. Because of the virtual platform, we were able to bring in a lot more speakers. Clearly, it's a lot easier to get online for an hour than it is to fly to Ghana, and requires much less time and much less carbon footprint. So that's another benefit. And we took all of these lectures and we recorded them, and so we posted them to YouTube, so people who were not able to join live were still able to benefit from that. As I mentioned, we did have office hours, so that allowed for smaller group discussion. We tend to get a really wide range of questions, and some of the instructors, if they felt the office hours were really informative, they also recorded those and posted them later on. When we asked people, what did you find most useful, I just wanted to point out how much people really do love the live content. If it's live lectures and panel discussions, everything shaded in blue here has to do with that live content. And even if it was recorded and they're watching it after, they found it to be useful. So we're really trying to be as responsive as possible to what the feedback that we get. And so, we made sure to maintain that and expand it for 2021 after getting this feedback from the virtual school in 2020. As Brian said, we have lab exercises at the in-person school, and so we moved those online. And I'll emphasize that removing that barrier to access by having all of our labs done through Python. So open source software is really important, again, because it removes that barrier to access. And so we're slowly expanding that aspect of the school. And so for this year, the 2021 virtual school, we actually had a Jupyter hub that makes things a little bit easier, because rather than individual Python environments, we're all in one. And so the setup is a lot easier for those of you who are familiar with it. This came through Pangeo and the 2i, 2c organization. And so there was all of the data sets that are stored in the Pangeo cloud, our participants had access to. The one downside is that you do need stable internet access. This is not something that you can, download and move, use offline. You have to have that connection. So again, one of our tactics really has been to try to offer as much as possible for our diverse participants. So for people who have that good internet connection, who are eager to do more with cloud computing, but then also still having a lot of material for people who don't have those resources. So I'd say our outcomes that in the future, when we are back in person, we're going to maintain some of this virtual content, so it'll be more of a hybrid model. We learned time and time again that providing these multiple options for engagement is important. And having the virtual school has really improved our ability to keep communication going year round. And that's really important for building this community of ocean enthusiasts, which is ultimately our goal. So with that, I'll pass it over, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Maddie. So Maddie introduced herself, and I guess Tashiana, I'll just say, got her PhD at Scripps and is now a postdoc at Hopkins, and we've not met in person. We've only met online through her advisor, who's a good friend of mine. But if you want to add more to that. And I also was going to mention, I think Frank, I think I didn't mention this, Frank and Enrique from USF are two of the people that are examples of people that participated in our school virtually, because it's relatively easy. So thanks, Frank and Enrique. So go ahead, Tashiana.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Okay, let's see. All right, does it look good to go? You can see it. Okay.
Looks good.
All right, so yes, as Brian mentioned, I'm now a postdoc at Johns Hopkins, and I'm actually more in atmospheric science than oceanography. But of course, as you know, the ocean and atmosphere are inextricably linked, so both are important, important to understand both. So throughout my education so far, I've always gone back to this quote by Nelson Mandela, where he said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And I think that's something that really speaks to the visions of OceanCorps. So I'm earlier on in my career in a postdoc position, as I mentioned, and I was able to have this wonderful opportunity to serve in a leadership position as part of COESSING and now OceanCorps. As part of COESSING, I was a lecturer in atmospheric science, and what I focused on was some of my research that had to do with extreme precipitation and atmospheric river storms. That was a great opportunity to be able to share research across nations with people who I was able to also learn from. So it ended up being very much so a two-way learning experience. And I should mention, as Brian said, I haven't been able to meet the other folks who are part of COESSING or OceanCorps in person, but the type of environment that we operate in virtually, it's as if we already have met. It's kind of like a family type feel. And that's something else that I really appreciate about being part of this program. So I got really good feedback on some of the lectures I was giving, and also great insight into what's happening in terms of extreme events in regions of Ghana and other places, primarily in Africa. And I also had, throughout my PhD, these incredible opportunities to go to the United Nations Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC and start to understand a bit more about what's happening behind the scenes when it comes to global or international climate policy. And so I recently was a co-author on two publications that had to do with early career perspectives on these United Nations meetings. And so that was something else that I wanted to have discussions about with participants. So during the office hours, I was able to learn more about, what societal issues are happening around where you live and how can possibly science be used to help inform policies that address those problems. And so I'm just showing here some pictures of those connections where I really feel like, we were able to connect across the oceans, nations, and also diasporas. It was incredible to see so many friendly faces and to be able to learn from one another. And who knows if we would have ever had a chance to meet in such a way and share science in this way. So I was part of, first, the August 2020 summer school. That was the first one I was involved in. And then there was a mini school, or what we kind of called a winter school, in January. And part of the reason that we were able to kind of like sneak in that January mini school was because we were doing everything virtually. So we could reshare some of the materials and have new panels and have it be accessible and easy for everyone to join. And so another part of the COESSING experiences that I've helped co-lead are these virtual STEAM Pathways panels. And so both for the summer during the pandemic, the first summer then, and then the winter school. And this was a great opportunity to take on this role as kind of like a planning, organizing position, but then also to help moderate and really think about what speakers can we bring in that might not be as easy to reach for those who are in Africa, but who have a great wealth of knowledge to share with, especially early career, mid-career professionals. So some of the speakers were from US institutions, some were from within Ghana, regions of Africa, but some really powerful speakers to learn from. And we were able to get great questions as well from the audience members. And so the most recent COESSING summer school was in August. And for this one, I helped organize the Women in STEM panel. And again, just a powerhouse of speakers that also provided many opportunities and resources in the chat box. So there was also the chat going where it was it was an open dialogue where, if participants had questions on how they could get involved in certain internship or exchange programs, there was always someone in the chat box responding. And Edem was one of those people who she's just incredible speaker and was able to give a lot of advice to those who are trying to walk in their own path. And so for OceanCorps, what I think of is the future that we want collectively. And that's increased knowledge sharing and capacity building and partnerships, actions, and support between nations. And part of this overlaps with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It directly targets many of them, including topics under gender equality, climate action, life below water, and partnership for these goals to succeed. And so we're thinking of this needing to be a holistic and long-term approach versus a Band-Aid approach. And lastly, it's going to be essential that we can integrate the healthy equity advancing partnerships, the science to action projects, and progress in science and education in order to redefine what we think of as excellence in STEM by incorporating all of these. The equity piece is a key piece. And then also to go further in tackling some of the complex challenges that the world faces. And that's all I have. Let's see.
Great. So I'll briefly introduce Edem and let her say more if she wishes to. So Edem is got her PhD at University of Ghana, and she is there now as a faculty member. And she's been a co-organizer of our Ghana school since 2016, almost the beginning, and she's a member of OceanCorps. She's highly sought after. People like to bring her into a lot of collaborations. She's very, very popular, and she's on several UN decade projects that I'm aware of. And I will also say I just find Edem very inspiring. She's an ocean biogeochemist, and she and her students have managed to publish papers in top journals, despite the fact that until recently she doesn't have a lab. So imagine that, doing lab work without a lab. So basically what she does is she energetically pursues collaborations in the UK and the US, but I do believe she is now building a real lab in Ghana. Maybe she'll tell us a bit about that, but go ahead, Edem.
Brian, thank you everybody. My name is Edem Mahu, so I'm a senior lecturer here at the University of Ghana, marine biogeochemistry. My background is mainly in looking at pollution, so heavy metal cycling in the coastal ocean environment, looking at the impact of land-based activities on the coastal ocean or the coastal environment. My research is mostly limited to the coast because of limitation in research capacity, and it's not just me, but a lot of us tend to focus more on the coast because we do not have the capacity to, go into the offshore areas to do the kind of sophisticated things that our colleagues are doing elsewhere in the world. But we tend to focus more of our attention on the coast for that matter. I'm also, as Brian said, I am participating in a number of decade projects. So I am on the steering committee for Coast Predict, but also recently I've been given the role to co-lead one of the packages, which is on ocean and human health. I am also a co-lead of the Global OceanCorps in Colombia, which Brian and Madeline and Tashiana and other colleagues and I, got together and then sent to the UN decade for endorsement, and which has been endorsed now. I am also a co-lead for EPIC. So mostly you find in these programs which tend to address some of the issues that we have currently confronting us as researchers here in Africa. My colleagues have said a lot about Ghana, about Africa, about capacity development in Africa, but my presentation is to give more or sort of an in-depth what it takes, what it feels like to be in Africa and to be doing ocean sciences. And then because I'm from Ghana, I'll use Ghana, but the situation in Ghana is not very different from what you will find in other parts of the continent, especially West Africa. So we have a land area of about 235,540 square kilometers, and out of that, the ocean makes out about 539 of its length, its boundary length. Our population stands at 31. It's fast increasing. This was the population before the recent one, which is yet, the result is yet to be released. So it's likely that this number will shoot up. We have an exclusive economic zone, which covers 225,000 square kilometers. So you realize that our EEZ is actually greater than, or is bigger than our land size as a country, which means that we have a lot of opportunities to explore as far as the ocean is concerned, if we are able to develop capacity in ocean science. And this goes for other countries in the region as well. However, unfortunately, our coastal marine environment is confronted with many challenges. We have pollution being one of the number one problems that we face as a country. Pollution cuts across heavy metal pollution. I got to know through one of my collaborators that when it comes to heavy metal pollution, it's not an issue at all when you go to Europe or some countries in Europe. But when you come to Africa, it's one of those prominent issues because of the way we handle our waste and also some of the inland activities like mining and other stuff that are not really regulated. And so we have that issue. Then we also have nutrients becoming a threat. So Ghana is among those regions that have been identified and having expanding hypoxic zones around the world. And this is simply because of the nutrients, amount of nutrients that are going into our coastal environment. Now we have a flagship program like Planting for Food and Jobs, which is, subsidizing farmers' inputs like fertilizers. So more fertilizers are given to farmers to boost their production. We are doing this, but we are not regulating their usage and we are not managing it well. So all these things, go back into the marine environment. Plastics are a big problem. They've overwhelmed us. We are not able to manage the plastic situation in the country. So when you come to the beaches, not just Ghana, but along the African coast, you find a lot of plastics that are accumulating along our coastlines, and we have started research looking at microplastics, and our waters are not spare of microplastic either. Then other emerging contaminants like the pharmaceutical products that are also finding their ways into our coastal marine environment. We have habitat modification and degradation. A lot of our wetlands have been encroached upon. People are building. We have our mangroves being cut down by people who are using them for firewood. So when you go to the water region, you see huge piles of mangrove vegetations that have been cut down and are waiting to be transported to neighboring towns as firewood. We have sand winning, which is a major problem. Flooding is becoming very, very common along some of our coastlines. Recently, we had this tidal wave in the water region, which it's something that keeps coming and it keeps displacing a lot of communities. Our fisheries are declining, and also our biodiversity. Sea level rise is a problem that also affects us. Coastal erosion is also one of those problems that is very, very common along the coast of Ghana and also Africa. And in fact, it's one of those priority hazards that we are currently debating on how to, address the issue, because it looks like the measures we are putting in place are not really helping us solve challenges. So with all these challenges, indeed, we need to be able to develop capacity to address these challenges. However, there are barriers to addressing these challenges in the region. So one of these barriers is the fact that the state itself prioritizes other needs when it comes to Africa and many developing countries. You realize that there are other competing problems that confront us as a people. So health is one of those issues. You hear about outbreak of diseases, cholera, typhoid, what have you. So a lot of attention is channeled into these areas. Education is one of those issues that we are battling with until recently, where we are trying to make education up to the senior high school level free for everybody. You realize that there are a lot of people who are not able to even go to school. So these are big problems that in the 21st century you don't expect to see, but we have them in these developing countries. Hunger is a problem, and so a lot of the attention is dedicated to these issues. And so environmental conservation is not something that is prioritized. And then when it even comes to environmental conservation, you realize that you're more concerned with terrestrial environment, conserving the terrestrial environment. We don't give any attention, or we give little attention to what pertains to the coastal environment. And because of this, nationwide and along the continent, you realize that there is limited interest in oceanography as well, because a lot of people want to finish school and then quickly they get jobs, but this is not a field that you really are promised of jobs. And a lot of times we have people coming to do the graduate program, the undergraduate program. Once they finish, they move into other areas, other sciences. They don't major in oceanography, they go to other sciences, they move to medicine and other areas. And even where we have graduate students or people pursuing to the graduate level, people who have the opportunity to travel to the developed countries, they don't come back because the opportunities are not here for them. And so they, look at the way things, and most of them just decide to just stay up there and not come back home. So we have that problem as well. Then we have limited capacity in also conducting research. So for those of us who, decided to even become experts or work in the country, we face a lot of problems. We do not have, as a nation, we don't have research vessel. So most of the times, like I said, our research is limited to the coastal areas. We have to go with canoes of fishermen and what have you. Some of our institutions lack basic ocean going equipment and laboratory infrastructure. Limited funding is a problem for us, and the difficulty we have in establishing collaborations with scientists from the developing world. So sometimes, even where you see RFPs and you want to respond, getting connected to scientists is a problem. I have spoken to colleagues who tell me that sometimes you even send emails to scientists from the developing world to collaborate with them, and they don't respond. So it doesn't even encourage you to pursue the funding speaking agenda anymore. So these are the barriers. And so for me, I have been involved in a number of these high-level international initiatives that are seeking to remove some of these barriers, and I call them flagship initiatives. And one of these initiatives is the COESSING, the Coastal Ocean Environment Summer School in Ghana. What has this school been doing? It gives broad and specialized oceanographic training to undergraduate students and also graduate students from Africa. So Brian already said a lot about it. The school is able to connect African ocean scientists to scientists from US and Europe for now, because this is where we have our experts coming from, to provide both mentorship and also establish research collaborations. The school has provided opportunities for African scientists to feature in high-level activities. Examples like seminars of this nature that I'm very privileged to be, speaking on. This is not just the only seminar that we have talked about the summer school on. We've done this for a number of schools in the US, and we have a number of schools in the pipeline or institutions in the pipeline this year to also speak up. We are also convening sessions in the ocean sciences meeting. For instance, this is something that this is the first of its kind, and so this is one of the areas that the summer school is helping, link African sciences to or connect us to the global world. Who has also helped in recommending African scientists for representation on high-level decade programs, such as Coast Predict. So Brian said that I am involved in a number of these decade programs, and Brian has been one of those contacts that, because of the connection he has with, usually the people would contact him to link him to people who are doing ocean-related work in Africa. And so with that, then we also have emerging large-scale proposals such as biogeoscapes and also glauconite research that we are putting a proposal together on, very large-scale program in the Gulf of Guinea. The school has facilitated some exchange opportunities for our students, graduates. So just to highlight a bit of that, we even have a project now that is between Oregon State University, Hampton University, and the University of Ghana, where we are putting together 2 undergraduate students, each from these institutions, who will form groups of 2, and we put them on different projects, and we give them mentoring over a period of 3 years, allowing the Ghanaian students to visit Oregon State University, and then allowing our US participants to also come to Ghana So we have this kind of opportunities that have also emerged out of the summer school. We have graduate students co-supervision opportunities as well. So some of our faculties are teaming up with our colleagues from the developed world to supervise some of our students. So it gives them, that exposure as well. Then we also have graduate student opportunities, which Brian has also presented. So these are some of the things that COESSING has been doing on the continent, and in fact, it has really helped in facilitation of promoting ocean research in Africa. We also have which I happen to be a co-lead of. It's a platform that was co-designed through consensus-based stakeholder discussion with more than 200 scientists from around the world. And it aims to improve the inequities that we have in ocean science by providing financial support, fostering collaboration, co-financing ocean science between academia, government, NGOs, and also private sector. So it hopes to, work closely with these people to co-develop or co-finance projects that the region can actually benefit from, and also supporting the development of fit-for-purpose, low-cost ocean science technologies for the developing world. And then finally, Global OceanCorps and Conveyor, which Brian and my colleague Tashiana have spoken about already. This is something that also holds a lot of promise for us scientists from Africa. It seeks to inspire oceanographers to engage the world via capacity development and research collaboration. It also will create and support existing collaborations with ocean scientists globally to address the inequities that we currently see. Today, I was approached by Alison Clausen from the UN Decade Program Office, and she sent a concept about the first call that is sent out for collaboration of programs. You realize that in all the programs that were endorsed, we didn't have any scientists, or we didn't have scientists from Africa leading any of these calls. These are things that we need to dig into, understand why we are not even able to respond to some of these big initiatives or put in our applications and all that. With that said, I want to thank you all very much for giving me the audience. Thank you very much.
Brian, are you final words?
I'm here.
Well, we're right at the hour, but if you guys can would be willing to stick around for a little while, I'm sure there would be some questions.
Sure.
Okay, that sounds great. For the audience, we're open to any questions or comments. I do have one. Yeah, well, somebody's clapping down below, so maybe we should all do that too. Thank you. I never know whether we should do that before or after questions. I see lots of clapping now, so apparently it's before. My mistake.